Hi everybody. Welcome to the Back Porch Writer Show here on Blab. This is the first time that I'm bringing the Back Porch Writer Show to this environment, this platform, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And this is in honor of the Brain to Books Cyber Convention that's happening over on Goodreads and Facebook, and you guessed it, right here on Blab. So all of the interviews that I'm doing with the various authors will be available for you later, and you can go over to the Back Porch Writer YouTube page and you'll be able to see them there. So that's what I have for you. I have a guest today named Tom Fallwell. You might be seeing him right now, and he is the author of a couple different books. But as I explained to Tom right before this, I can't pronounce the name of the series very well. I tried. I did it on the Back Porch Writer Show a couple weeks ago, and I just butchered. I know I butchered the name, so I told him before this when we were chatting that I wasn't even going to try. So I'm going to have Tom come on right now and tell us a little bit about himself. Hey, Tom, welcome to Back Porch Writer.
Hello. It's nice to be here. What you're trying to pronounce, I call Rangers of Lorien.
Lorien, okay.
Yeah. Now, some people say Lorien. Either way is fine. Some people say something totally different, and it really doesn't matter because I just made these words up, so that how they're pronounced is no big deal, really.
A writer made up words? No.
Oh yes. I use a fantasy name generator actually online to generate my names and stuff.
Really? I didn't even know that existed. So there's a fantasy name generator. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
But the two books I have out now are Whisper in the Shadows, which was the first book, and book 2 is Where Shadows Fall. And I am currently working on book 3, which will end the current story, and it's called The Shadow of Narwhal.
So what's this whole thing about?
The whole thing is about the Rangers. I created the main character in this story, Barrick. He was a character that me and my brother actually created back in the 80s. It was for a comic book, actually. And I have always had this character in my head. I go play games. I create a character named Barrick. He's been with me all this time. So when I started writing novels, I wrote Dragon Rising, which was my first novel, and it had a few problems, but it's been accepted pretty good. But I learned so much from that, and I wanted to create my own world like Tolkien. I wanted to create my own whole fantasy world with history and lore and politics, the whole shebang. So I set out creating with Barrick in mind, and I'd always considered him a ranger. So I came up with the idea of a group of heroes for this world called the Rangers of Lorien. There's a forest named Lorien that they live near, and they live in the city of Lorien is where their headquarters is, so that's where they get the name. But they're the kind of heroes that parents grow up telling their kids about, telling them the legends and the tales. And the kids some of them, like Barrick, grew up wanting to be a ranger. That was their goal in life, was to become a ranger. And he is someone that became a ranger, and as the story progresses, he has a more and more important role in the Rangers. He starts out having just being a ranger, and he becomes more and more important as the story progresses. So. But that's what it's all about, and of course we got dragons and giant lions and all kinds of good stuff.
So when did you start writing, or have you always written?
I wrote a short story in early 2014. I had been a programmer most of my life. I decided to retire from that, and I'd always wanted to write some stuff. I like I said, tried to do a comic book back in the 80s, but it didn't take off real good. But so after I retired, I had plenty of time, so I sat down and I wrote a short story, A Strong Tower, which is basically kind of a Christian romance type of thing. Christian romance, fantasy, thriller, mystery, I don't know what you'd call it, but it's in the Pathology Light anthology that's out for free on Amazon. And after I wrote that, I decided I wanted to write a novel, and I sat down and started writing one that I had in my head for a while, and that was Dragon Rising. And that was about a young elf lady who finds out she's orphaned and lives in the woods by herself, and she finds out she is the one of prophecy that has dragon blood and is destined to become the queen of the kingdom. So it's an interesting story that I wrote, and I did that, and then I just started on the Rangers and started going from there. It was early 2014 when I started writing Dragon Rising. I finished it up around, I think, November of 2014, and then it was probably October, and then Rangers, A Whisper in the Shadows, I had it out by the next March or so. And then Where Shadows Fall was just released last February.
So why a trilogy?
I didn't actually start it out as a trilogy. I started out as a story, and when I got to the end, I thought there could be a whole lot more to this. and really the story kind of, it's like I started to tell it, but then it started telling me what to tell. So it just kind of took a life of its own and just said we're going to be a trilogy. I said, okay.
Okay, I guess it's going to be a trilogy.
So it's going to be a trilogy. But the series I'll continue. I have a lot of ideas for all kinds of stories in different time periods, different characters for the whole series. But this first story
in that realm.
Yeah.
Okay.
In that world. But the trilogy is going to introduce everyone to it and give you the history and some of the lore. And also, for my people that subscribe to my mailing list from my website, I'm going to be starting a historical series that will be for them exclusively, that they'll be able to read on my website with monthly installments that tells the entire history background of the world in which the Rangers now live. They're in the story that I'm writing now is in the 4th era, and this history will detail the first 3 eras and how they got there. So.
Okay, so then the next question has to be: are you? It sounds like you are, but I want to clarify. Are you more of an outliner or a pantser type of writer?
I try to get an outline, but that usually changes. As I start writing, like I said, it's just like it starts telling me where it wants to go. And that kind of, I think, goes back to, I used to dungeon master or game master for Dungeons and Dragons a long time ago, and I'd run adventures for players. And I would lay out an adventure. I'd create a little adventure for them and everything. I'd lay it all out, and then we'd start playing, and they'd do things I didn't expect. And so I learned to, on the fly, change things and put things in that they try to keep them surprised, basically. Uh-huh. So I think that's helped me a lot in the way I'm writing now. That's the way it goes. I start out, I have an idea of what I want to do, but inevitably the story kind of grabs hold of me and says, let's go this way. So it's almost like the characters are telling it to me.
Right, but how much of that do you actually plot out to begin with? Because I mean, you're talking about, a whole history thing that goes, like you said, you're in the 4th era or whatever, and you've got to go back and explain.
I laid out an outline of the first 3 eras, but now that I'm going back and detailing it, some things are changing. But there's some of the information is also being revealed, like in Where Shadows Fall, book 2. Some of that information about the past is revealed. And in book 3, even more is going to be revealed. So I've got to keep it correlated so that I don't mess myself up.
Okay, so how are you doing that? How do you keep it all organized?
Determination.
You're not supposed to laugh at that question. People are watching. They want to know what you
really
do.
Know.
Like, what? What do you mean you just laughed at that question?
Determined imagination. I just keep track of what I'm doing, and I don't actually have notes though in my head.
What? You don't have notes? Seriously? You don't have notes?
Well, I type up a little bit of text, like I said, I outlined the first 3 eras and all that, but a lot of it is just in my head. And sometimes I dream about what I want to do. So,
okay, I'm just going to tell you that someone in the chat room said, "Oh my God, I get so lost." So I mean, I'm with that person right now, because I'm thinking I write mystery thrillers, and I have a hard enough time keeping that stuff straight. I'm not even making up a whole other world that I'm making, just on the fly making stuff up. I would, if I was writing what you're writing, I think I would have to become more of an outliner. I think I'd really have to.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I think doing things on the fly when I did role play gaming, tabletop role play gaming, and I've played role playing games all my life. But back when I actually used to DM and run the players through adventures, I got in the habit of what they did would give me an idea, and I would go with it. So I was able to change things on the fly.
But I get that. But how do you keep track of it? If you're in the 4th realm, and then you're like,
I guess I lived there.
Oh my God! I think what you're doing would be really challenging. Just the keeping track.
It is, but it's still a lot of fun too.
I have a blank wall behind me. I would need flowcharts on that, with maybe pictures.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because as a programmer, I had to be organized.
Right.
I had to lay things out. I had to use logic. So I guess what I'm doing is I'm breaking away from the logic. I'm letting my imagination run free, and I don't have to be logical or multitask or anything like that.
So how long does it take you to write one of your books? How many words are you averaging in the book, actually?
Let's see. I think Dragon Rising was about 80,000.
Wow.
A Whisper in the Shadows was about 70. No, it was not quite 70,000. And Where Shadows Fall was a little over 70, close to 80,000 again.
So how long does it take you to write your first draft of a manuscript?
I don't actually write that way.
Okay, how do you write?
So sometimes right in the middle of the story, I'll go back and change things. I tend to write chapter by chapter. And as I get a chapter done, I'll go over it a couple of times until I say, okay, I like the way it is, and I'll move on to the next chapter. But then something may happen later on, and I'll go back and totally rewrite a chapter. So, but eventually I end up with a draft that I'm going to say, okay, beta readers, here it is, and let them take a look at it. And then once I'm through with them and with all the changes they suggest and everything, then I send it on to the editors.
So you use beta readers, since you brought that up.
This book that I'm writing now is the first time I've had one person helping me with feedback on my previous books, a friend that I have that lives in Albuquerque. And she's been real helpful and with her feedback, but she's not really a fantasy fan. So I've been getting kind of a unique perspective from her, in that she's not really a fantasy fan, but yet she likes what I'm writing. So, but this time I've gathered up some other authors I've met and that are into fantasy and stuff, and I've got myself a little beta team set up. Some are reading along as I write it, kind of like alpha readers, I guess. And then some are going to wait until I get the first draft done, and then they're going to be the beta readers.
And so the people that you have reading, if I heard you correctly, they are other authors. How did you come to meet those people and ask them to
I have met hundreds of people online since I started this thing. I'm in several groups on Facebook. I've met authors in England and Mexico and Greece, all over the place. And it's just through these groups and over the last couple of years, we've all become good friends. I don't see other authors as a competition. I don't compete with them. I actually try to help them, and that helps me. So,
I'm not sure. It's interesting you bring that up, because I've never thought of the other authors as competitors. It just doesn't seem like that environment to me either. It's more of a, hey, let's hang out and see if we can help each other do what we want to do. And especially if you're in the same genre, because like you found out, it's helpful to find somebody who reads what you write. I'm not a fantasy reader. I'm not a sci-fi reader, but I like both of those things, just in movie format. I like to see them in the movies, you know.
Well, but that's the way I picture them. As I'm writing things that I'm writing, I'm actually kind of picturing it like it was a movie. That's what helps me write it. And it's like sometimes they'll do things and I didn't even think of it. Like, ooh, that's neat. I'm going to write that down.
I think the last, I guess Harry Potter could be sort of, that's fantasy, right? So I read the whole Harry Potter series, and I read Aragon. I also liked that. So, I mean, I probably would read more on the fantasy side than I do on sci-fi, where I prefer to just watch that.
I like both. I'm actually planning to do some sci-fi in the future. So.
Now, my understanding of fantasy is that the books tend to be, on average, pretty long. So are yours on the lower end of that, or where are they?
I think they're more probably near the lower end of that, because I've seen other fantasy books and been reading other authors and they have. I think one guy, I told him I'd try to beta read, but I knew I couldn't get through it all. He had over 400,000 words. So I said, man, you should take this and turn it into a trilogy or something. So
write that sucker up. That's 400,000 words.
I think around 80 to 100,000 is where I feel comfortable. If I get to 100,000, I'll consider that a long novel for me.
Wow, that's a lot. See, I write mystery thrillers, so I'm at like 60,000.
Yeah.
65,000, something like that on a first draft. Yeah, I just can't imagine. I mean, I think you have to have a passion for it, which you clearly have a passion for writing the fantasy genre. And it is such
always
a fun
loved that. Yeah.
So, okay, what's the best advice you've received as an author?
Get an editor. Like I said, Dragon Rising, when I wrote that, I went over it many times, and I thought I had it down pretty good, but I found out real quick that despite how good I thought it was, there were errors. I had errors in punctuation, errors in format, all kinds of stuff, and someone helped me correct a lot of that, which I did, and he is now my editor. So.
So do you mind giving people an idea of what you think is fair to spend on an editor?
I think anywhere between $300 and $500 is probably what you're going to have to spend, and I think that's fair considering the amount of work they do and as many times as they go over the same manuscript. I'm paying close to that in that range myself, and I think it's very much worth it, even though my sales haven't made me break even or go above or anything like that. I still think it's worth having a good book. It's I think the quality is far more important than getting it done quick or trying to make money. As a matter of fact, I don't really care if I make money or not. I mean, it'd be nice. It definitely would be nice, but I'm not writing so much to make money as just because it's fun. It's fun, and I enjoy. I mean, when I wrote Dragon Rising, the biggest thrill I had was when my 86-year-old father, who does not read books, ever read my book and liked it. To me, that was the biggest thrill of all. That made my whole day right there, my whole year.
Raven in the chat room said that you need to hold on to your editor because that price is a little bit on the low end for that editor. No.
Yeah, I know it is, but he's good, and we have a nice collaboration with each other. We complement. I think he compliments me because he thinks like I do in ways as far as how things should be worded and stuff. And so I do take a lot of his suggestions to heart. It's very rare that I'll say, no, I don't want to do that. A good example is a reference to a deity in my books. They were referring to him as he who knows all things. And the only word capitalized was he. And he goes, shouldn't you be capitalizing all that? And I said, no, because that's not a title. That's just a reference. And that was one thing that I disagreed with him on.
So how much editing do you do before you give it to your editor?
Well, like I said, I go over the chapters several times. I go over the book many times myself, even when I've reached the end. I'll go back over it at least twice.
At least twice.
Yeah. But I kind of go, I'll write a chapter, I'll go back and go through it and make corrections, and then I'll go back and go through it again just to see if it's all right. So I go through a chapter at least twice before I say, okay, I'm going to move on to the next chapter. But
are you using any sort of editing software or grammar checkers?
I'm using Microsoft Word with whatever it's got built in. I have a online thesaurus I use. Got the fantasy name generator I use, and it generates elf names and orc names and dragon names, all kinds of.
What is that? What is this? Does it have a name?
I'd have to go look. It's in my bookmarks. If you give me a second here,
yeah, sure. Put it in the chat. Put the link in the chat if you can, because other people, I've never heard of it. Maybe some other fantasy author out there could use something like that. You know, I've heard of other name generators. I know Scrivener has a name generator thing in it. I use Scrivener. I don't use that name generator, but I know it's there. Is the point. So it might be helpful.
There it
is. Awesome. FantasyNameGen.com for those of you who are curious.
Yeah, it generates a lot of names. What I'll do, a lot of times it'll list up like 20 names, and then you can click to generate some more and so on. But a lot of times I'll just see one I like and I'll use it. But sometimes I'll see one I kind of like, and I'll see another one I kind of like. I might take them and put them together somehow, or just alter them a little bit.
Does it give some sort of pronunciation key?
No, I pronounce them how I want. That was the biggest fun when the Whisper in the Shadows had it turned into an audiobook. And it was quite an ordeal to sit down and write an entire pronunciation guide for the guy that was going to be doing the story. So
how did you go about doing your audiobook? Tell us a little bit about that.
I went on ACX, Audible. It's part of Amazon. I just got on there and searched through the producers and found some that would do it for a share of royalties, because I couldn't pay anything up front. And I found a good one, and he liked what he saw about my book, and he liked the book when he read it, and so he's done it. And he turns out he is really awesome, because it's the next best thing to having your book turned into a movie, because you're hearing different voices for the character that come to life.
Yeah,
and it was really awesome, and that's available on Audible and iTunes.
Can you grab the link for that and put that in the chat as well?
ACX.
Yeah, but for your book specifically, for the Audible version of your book, because that would be cool for people too. I mean, put the links for your books in the chat, period. But make sure that people know about Audible and all of that. And it is fun to be able to hear all of that. Well, how long was your process working with the editor or the producer from Audible?
That took about 8 months, I think, for him, and there were very few errors that I found when he was giving it to me. He did such a wonderful job. I was just thoroughly impressed, and I'd love for him to do the next book. But we got to see if he can make some money off of this one first.
Right? Got to be practical about some of these things.
Yeah.
Well, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Audible and ACX in that process, when you do the 50-50 split, which is what Tom is saying he did with his producer, one, you get paid after sales and all that jazz. But the process is they get the information, they start to do the recording, and then they send you via ACX the recordings, and you have to go in and listen to them and approve each one of those. And so this can, that's why the 8 months thing, it can take time to do this. It's not a quick boom, 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 you're done, because you have to actually listen to everything and approve everything. And there's a contract involved in the whole process. There's a contract.
And it's a lot of work on his part for what he's doing. The audio is about 7.5 hours long. So that's a lot of audio that he had to record. And I wasn't there, so I don't know how many times he had to record something before he felt he got it right. But he did a very professional job. He had excellent equipment, and the quality is good. It was just really awesome. And
ACX will flag it if it's not, if it doesn't meet certain standards of ACX, they will flag the audio and say there's a problem and it has to be re-recorded. And so anybody out there who's planning on doing audiobooks and wants to go through ACX and that process, just understand it's a process. It takes time. So you'll have to devote some time to it. And then realize that some of the reason why people don't want to do the 50-50 split is because of that, because it takes so much time and they have to spend so much time recording and all that, and they're not getting any money for it. Yeah,
you can negotiate with the producer on whatever kind of deal y'all want. You can give him money up front and 50-50, or you can do however y'all agree to do it. I think the accepted range, if you're paying up front for the work, is anywhere from $250 to, I think it's around $50 to $200 per finished hour. So it can get quite expensive.
Yeah, and there's prices out there that are higher than that.
If you want to control the pricing and the sales, how it's sold, then you have to do it that way. If you do it as a royalty split like we did, then Amazon takes control. They set the price, and it's sold exclusively through them. But they distribute it to iTunes. It goes to Amazon, to Audible, and to iTunes. So.
And I love Audible. Just throw that out there now. I got addicted to it a couple months ago.
I'm addicted to the guy that did my book. That was so cool. I want to hear him do some more stuff. It was really nice.
Well, now I didn't realize it was an Audible book. I wasn't even paying attention to that because I was just looking for ebooks and things like that. So now I have to go back and look because they always have samples. At least my experience so far on Audible sample. So I'll have to go listen to a sample of it and see, because as much as I say I don't like to listen, I mostly listen to nonfiction for my audio stuff. But on a long drive, it's nice to listen to a story and not just nonfiction. And so that's when I'll listen to something like that. So I'll have to check that out and see.
The sample I had him make was kind of in the middle of the story, really, but it was where they find a character. I have a race called Zoomarians, and it's not Zoo, Z-O-O, it's Zoo with the Z-U. But they are humanoid lion-like people.
Oh, wow.
And there's actually something revealed in book 3, which I'm writing now, as to how they came about. But they don't have tails, and their faces are mostly human, but they do have the cat-like lip and so forth, and sharp teeth and claws. And the voice he gave that character was so awesome. So I said, you got to do this part for the sample where he introduces Shahar. The character's name's Shahar. He is the growling voice that he gave that character was so perfect.
Oh, and sometimes I think people don't realize just that, voiceover, that's a huge, and all this it's voice acting. It's amazing. And some people are really, really good at it. And some people aren't.
Yeah.
So you have to find the people that are good at it.
And some people do audio books, they're just narration. They don't really do voices. But when I found out he was doing voices, I said, yeah, this is it. This is perfect. And he did excellent job. Oh,
well, now everybody's going to have to check that out.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to.
Yeah, it's on Audible. Just search for Tom Fallwell, you'll find it, and it's they got a 5-minute sample audio there.
Yeah, I have the link open. I'll be checking when we get off of the Blab here. Actually, during the break, I'll be checking that out and seeing what that's all about. So everybody else needs to do that too. So Tom, real quick, we have a little bit of time here. Why don't you talk a little bit about marketing and what you do for your marketing efforts and advertising efforts?
Well, I started out trying to sell books, and the harder I tried, the harder it was. So I just finally reached a point, and I said, this is too difficult. I'm not a marketer. I'm not a salesman. So I'm going to just promote other authors. And I do a monthly deal on Facebook, monthly event on Facebook. I call it a live magazine called Essentia Live that's connected to my author page. And I interview an author each month, a new author. I just do all kinds of events that I can. I just had one with a bunch of authors doing digital autographs for people that buy our ebooks and just stuff like that. And I found that the more I promote other people, the more sales I get. So
funny how that works.
Yeah, but I just my whole thing is I just want to have fun with it. I don't want to stress over it. I don't want to worry about it. I have a steady income from Social Security. That's enough. If that's all I get. But if I become the next J.R.R. Tolkien, I certainly won't complain one bit. I love it.
Not going to moan and groan about that.
No.
That's awesome. All right, you mentioned something in that though about ebook autographs. So how are you doing that? How's that happening?
There's a website. It's authorgraph.com. Just instead of autograph, it's authorgraph.com. It's somebody set that up. It's free to join for the reader and the author. And basically it displays your books. You get your own page. It displays your books. And if somebody's bought your book, or whether they have or not, they can go and say, I want an autograph for this book. And they click on that. It sends a request to you via email. And then I went in with my Microsoft Pro, Surface Pro, and went in and did the signature with the pen, and it's kept that. So now I can just go in and send them a signature. You can put in a custom note to the person and everything. But they can collect those and have them there on autograph, or they can have them sent to their Kindle and have them on their Kindle. But it's just a digital version of an author's autograph.
Yeah. The person who created that, I've since forgotten his name. I'm sorry. He was on Back Porch Writer a couple of years ago.
Oh,
and
okay.
It started out not as Authorgraph. It started out as Kindle something or other, and then he changed the name to Authorgraph. But it's something I've used for years too, and it's just a really cool service. Yep. The other thing that Authorgraph does, if you aren't familiar with it, everybody out there that's listening, it tells you your rank for your books too. So you'll know if a book goes up or down or whatever, because they'll send you a message. So that's kind of a neat thing. If you're not, I don't pay much attention to my rank a whole lot. And one day I got an email from them talking about one of my books, and I went, holy cow, Batman, it broke 100. And I was shocked.
I'm still waiting on that. I'll be glad
I would never have known. I would never have known if I wouldn't have gotten that email from Authorgraph, because I wasn't checking.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that it does, which is kind of cool. So definitely check that out. It's so cool that you mentioned that it's something that they use. Okay, also from a marketing perspective, and advertising, are you doing any advertising? I mean, the biggest craze right now is Facebook ads.
I've done a little bit with Facebook. I've done a little bit on Goodreads, but I don't have a whole lot to spend, so I just kind of do it here and there when I can afford it. I've been talking with my brother, who as I said, back in the 80s, we did comic book. And basically, I was the writer of the comic. He was the publisher of the comic. We had an artist and everything. But he's kind of wanting to get back into publishing again. So I was talking with him, and we're thinking about trying to get a hold of some of these comic conventions and art conventions and things like that to be able to get a booth there and set up and sell and show my books and sell them. Mm-hmm. And when he was talking to me about it, I said, I'm not trying to sell comics. He goes, I know, but don't you remember C.J. Cherry? And I go, no. And he goes, don't you remember? And he started talking about San Francisco convention we went to, and there's an author named C.J. Cherry there selling her books. Mm-hmm. Well, she's now a Hugo winner and bestseller. Mm. You can find it's Cherryh, and you can find her on Goodreads. She has written many fantasy novels. She's a big name out there with doll books. And she started in the conventions just like that. So I said, why not? Let's do that.
I see a lot of people. Last year I went to several different conventions and Comic-Cons and things like that. And that's when I realized, I should have my books here. I hadn't been thinking of it either. So I think it's a good idea. You should probably do that.
Yeah, that and I mean, I want to do some things locally, like I haven't really tried it yet. I want to go to some bookstores and see if I can set up signings and stuff. But those kind of conventions, if we can get started on them, and actually, if I can actually make enough sales and stuff, then we can start moving on to conventions in other states and so on.
I have had other authors mention the same thing, that I met at conventions, because then I had them on Back Porch Writer so we could chat longer. And many of them said that it was part of their marketing strategy. They weren't necessarily selling a lot of books at them, but it was just part of their getting the word out marketing strategy. And the other thing that many of them did was that they were on panels and things at the con. So they weren't only at their booth, they were talking, and that helped too. So for what that's worth, that's what some other authors have shared with me who have done it. That's right, and it's usually not terribly expensive, at least around here. I'm in Nebraska, so around Nebraska,
I think I've seen two of them that they're having here in my state. I think one table was 125 and another one was 400. But
that's a lot higher than here. Where are you?
Yeah, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. You're not that far from Nebraska. Come on, why is it so expensive over there?
I have no idea. That's the only. I only found two that I was looking at, and they're both later in the fall. And one of them said, those that have been there before are going to have priority to get a table. So it's going to be kind of hard to break into in some of them, I think. But
when you venture out, you should check Nebraska. It's not like that you're that far, because there's Ozfest here. That happens. There's Constellation, which is coming up in a week or two or something, or in May. Constellation's in Lincoln, Nebraska. Ozfest is in Omaha. Comic-Con is Omaha, Council Bluffs, that area. So those, when you get it on your agenda, those might be some to check out. And one of them was the first one I went to, I think, was Comic-Con, and I was shocked at the number of people that were attending that, and the number of vendors. There were a huge number of vendors, but the amount of people that came to the event was it was like 10,000, 11,000. It was a huge number of people that came. I was shocked. I had no idea.
That one we went to in San Francisco back in the 80s was huge. It took us quite a bit to fly down there and get a table and everything, but there were so many people there. We were selling comic books left and right. Not necessarily the ones we were producing, but my brother was into collecting and stuff, so he had lots of old first issue things and stuff like that, and we'd get in there and sell them.
Yeah, I have another friend who's an artist and does comics and things like that, and he's really what made me think about the Comic-Con and all that stuff, because he goes to them and he does really well, and he does art stuff on the fly, and then sells it. Heidi said that SLC Comic-Con booths run $800. What's SLC? I don't know what SLC stands for, but $800. Holy cow, that's pretty expensive.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Salt Lake City.
Utah.
Yeah, that's probably about right, considering. I mean, they wasn't that expensive back in the '80s, but nothing was. So
You all need to come to Nebraska. It's a lot cheaper here.
maybe.
It's more affordable, and you get lots of people. I'm just saying, just a suggestion. You may not like Nebraska, but
I hope one of these days I can just travel all over the United States and go to book signings and conventions.
Oh, it'd be awesome. Why limit to the United States? I mean, seriously, let's go everywhere.
Well, I don't know. I'm a little leery about going overseas. There's too much going on over there right now.
Oh, fine.
I think I'll stick here for now. Maybe I've been to Jamaica once. That was a lot of fun. I wouldn't mind going back there.
Heidi said that last Salt Lake City Comic-Con had 100,000 people. That's huge.
Yep.
That's absolutely huge. That would be fun to go to, though. That would be a lot of fun to go to. Is one of those. All right, so you dabbled in Facebook ads. When you dabbled in the Facebook ads, what was your objective? Was it to build your email list? Was it to sell? What were you trying to do?
Mainly, I just tried to increase the likes on my author page.
Okay.
I figured the more likes that show up on my author page, the more people I can reach when I post something. I know they don't reach everybody. I know Facebook does a lot of filtering and stuff like that, but I've got almost 1,000 on there. I've got 1,500 followers on Twitter, and I didn't pay for any of them. I just, like you said, just getting name recognition, letting everybody know I'm a fantasy author. I write fantasy novels, and I've got books for sale. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to let my own local news people know that, but I don't know. I know how to get a what do you call it? News,
like a press release.
Press release. I know how to get one of those made up and everything. But they don't accept them through email or nothing. You got to go through an agency, and they charge a fortune.
You don't really need to do that, actually. There's somebody want to know what you write. He writes fantasy. I'm gonna mess up your at name. Sorry, but Tom writes fantasy. And Raven is mentioning Media Kit as part of your Media Kit, having things like that. What's your website? Do you have a website?
Yes.
Okay,
TomFallwell.com.
Okay, you might want to put that in the chat. TomFallwell.com. But do you have a media kit? Have you put together anything like that?
No, I haven't.
Well, that would be something to do right there. Put together a media kit. But the press release thing, I know from my experience, I can send them directly to specific editors and things like that, especially if I know that what I want to promote is newsworthy. It hit on a certain topic that's popular with them at that time. So that's something to do. Now, I will say the reason I know how to do this and what I'm doing is my father's background is broadcast journalism. And so I have a good person to go to ask those kind of questions. But I know you can do it. That's something that's possible. Does anybody have any questions for Tom? We have a few people lurking there and a few people in the chat. If you have a question for him, you can type /Q and then your question, and it'll show up, and then we can answer it pretty easily. I can even put it into the open seat, or you can come in.
I do have a special I'm running this weekend for Brain to Books.
Okay.
A Whisper in the Shadows and Where Shadows Fall, both books, $4. But that's
how much?
$4.
$4. Okay.
But the only way to get that, because I can't do it's too hard to go to Amazon and do discounts and all that stuff. So the way I'm doing that is somebody contact me, and I can send them a PayPal invoice or set it up through Shopify, which I started using today. But set that up so they can get both books for just $4, the ebooks.
All righty then. So does anybody have any questions for Tom before we let him go? Do we contact you through the website? That's what Heidi wanted to know.
There's a contact form you can use that'll email me and let me know if you want to talk to me.
Well, hold on. I need to find out who this person is so I identify them correctly, because I'm seeing them there, and they said that they read, is it Charity? I hope I'm saying that right. Cherry said that read the first two. I read so much I forget sometimes. I read so much I forget sometimes. Charity Grace. Okay, thank you. I was having a hard time reading it all together for some reason. But I've been up a long time, and I was substitute teaching kindergarten today. So I'm a little bit like, woo! It was my first day substituting kindergarten.
My hat's off to you.
So, Charity, do you want to come on and ask Tom a question, or do you have other comments you'd like to make about what you thought was so cool? See, I'm going to leave that hang there for you so you can think about it. You have about 30 seconds. No, just kidding. Take your time. But you can put it in the chat if you don't want to come into the live part where everyone can see you. That's perfectly fine. But I want to make everybody know you can come into the open seat. So feel free to chat with us in the open seat if you want to. Any other questions for Tom? My laptop is old and decrepit. Charity. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. That's sad. So, Tom, it has been a pleasure having you here. Tell everybody the names of the name of your series again, so they can find it.
Rangers of Lorien.
Rangers of Lorien, and he made that up. He used that name generator thing and made that up. That's why I couldn't pronounce it correctly on the show. But that's okay. And he said I could just make it up too. So we're good with that.
Yeah, it doesn't really concern me how people pronounce the names in my book. It really doesn't.
As long as they read it.
The only one I worry about how it's pronounced is the guy doing the audio. You got to make sure he's got it right. So.
Before we go, Charity said, are any movies being made?
Boy, I wish. There is a company here in Oklahoma that is setting up studios. And I saw on Brain to Books that they had a post where they're asking people to send in books that they may use to consider for movie options. And so I'm going to send them both of my books Monday, and who knows?
Who knows? I have to go check that out. I didn't see that. I'm a little bit behind on looking at all the Goodreads posts and things. But I'll have to look at that. But if that works out for you, if something pans out, let me know, because you could always come on the Back Porch Writer Show on Blog Talk Radio, and we can talk about that process and what happened or not happened or all of that, because that's a fun thing to learn about, because you're selling your rights, and selling your rights in different venues is something that whole other world. So that would be really fun.
My only worry is if they're going to let me be a consultant or not, and I'd hate for them to take it and totally change it.
Yeah. Charity wanted you to know you should be careful. So do your due diligence and check them out. Make
I will definitely do that. They're basically they're saying that at the very least they will display all books that are sent to them in their lobby, because their studios are for other aspiring movie makers to use. And so that they'll have them there so that maybe they will look at the books and say, hey, that's an idea for a movie or something.
So there's some risk involved. There's a certain level of risk, but there always is. And do your due diligence and check them out. Check out everybody.
I'm pretty, I guess I'd say I'm real skeptical about deals. I've always been that way.
You're a programmer.
I'm a programmer. I have never had a virus in the past 20 years, at least. I'm real skeptical about. I don't open emails that I have no idea who they come from and stuff like that. So I'm real good at that.
Awesome. Well, Tom, I want to thank you so much for being here on the Back Porch Writer Show right here on Blab IM. First time ever. Lots of fun. And it's all part of the Brain to Books Cyber Convention for 2016. Again, Tom, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to pause the recording just so everybody knows.
Hello, everyone. I'm Heidi Angell, and I am the author of the Hunter series, which is an urban fantasy for those who believe that vampires should be killed and not kissed. Yeah. It's awesome. The second book is coming out this summer. I also have the Clear Angel Chronicles, which is a psychic detective series. And the first 2 books are out in that. The first book is Elements of a Broken Mind. The second book is Angel's Dance. And the third book will be coming out early next year. I also just published the first in a 4-part series called the House School series, which is based on my experience with being stalked through high school. It is listed as fiction because it's safer for me. But it is very much based on my real experiences. So those are my big series.
I need to back up because you started with, we can't kiss vampires. What are you talking about?
No, you can kiss them if you want to, but there are some of us who think that they should be staked. and I'll be honest, I am on the fence. I go back and forth depending on my mood, but I grew up, I'm an 80s child, and I grew up with things like Lost Boys and Anne Rice, and the concept of kissing a vampire, though very appealing, is about as smart as kissing a shark. And so that's kind of the take that I go with in my series. And it's really fun because I bring in the 2 characters that go across multiple books in the series are a werewolf named Havoc and an immortal named Fury. And yeah, she's awesome. And they are the pieces that you follow the story, but you follow the story. Each story is told from the perspective of the people that they're helping. So in the first one, it's primarily told through a 17-year-old boy named Chris, who his town is being infested by vampires. And he and his brother and a few of their friends try to fight back. And in the process of doing that, find themselves woefully outnumbered and inadequate to be able to fight. And then these 2 strangers show up. And at first they're like, oh, get out of our way. We know what we're doing. You don't know what you're doing. You're going to get yourself killed. And then Fury ends up getting injured in a sneak attack. And so they end up having to combine forces because Havoc is left with an injured Fury. And what do I do? And then it just goes through the story from there. And then in the sequel, we actually follow one of the characters from the first book got bit by a werewolf. And so he's turning into a werewolf. And they're going after the werewolf who bit him. And he goes with Havoc and Fury to track down this female werewolf that bit him and help her because she's a danger not only to herself, but to werewolves in general if she keeps going the way she's going. And so that's that whole plot running there.
Okay, why did you start writing this?
I've always been fascinated with urban fantasy, even before urban fantasy was really a genre. The idea of, right, labels. But I love vampires, but I feel like the kissy vampires have kind of gotten watered down. One of the joys of, Bram Stoker.
Don't do anything for you?
No. I get where it's going because they're doing it with zombies now too. But yeah, I know, warm bodies. It was cute, and then a lot of other people started doing it. I'm like, no, I can't get behind that. No, but I can understand the appeal of a vampire. I can understand why a human would be attracted to it. We're attracted to sharks. We're attracted to tigers. We're attracted to lions.
I'm not attracted to sharks.
You don't think they're super cool? You don't watch Shark Week?
No.
Really?
No.
Well,
no, they terrify
it's pretty popular with a lot of people. How about that?
Terrify me? No.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm in the
spider realm. We had this conversation. Okay, for those of you who are out of the loop, we did a panel moments ago, a couple hours ago actually. There was a multicultural panel through Brain to Books. Okay, so Heidi and I were on that panel, and we were talking about spiders because we were talking about rescuing and not rescuing women or who don't want to be rescued. And I just made the comment that if there's a spider, please rescue me. So the shark,
I volunteered.
Yes, and the shark falls in that category.
Yeah.
I don't want want to be.
Well, I think they're amazing. I love every time we go to the aquarium, I'm just fascinated with watching the sharks. But I also have a healthy respect. I would not get in and swim with one.
Okay,
and that's kind of, you serious? What? No. Well, and that's my perspective on vampires too. I think that they're amazing. I understand people's fascination with them, but the idea that a vampire would fall in love with a human for any extended period of time is, I mean, I have a love affair going with my cake, but I end up eating it. It always happens. And so that's kind of the perspective of, and honestly, my brother is a huge fantasy fan, and he worked in retail and was attacked by Twilight people. And I was talking to him about this idea, this story that had been generating for years. And he's like, you know what? Now is the time to publish it. And I was like, no, everybody likes sparkly vampires. Everybody likes falling in love with vampires. Okay, and he said, and this is what he said. He said, you know what? All the girls like it. All the guys will love your book. You need to publish your book. And I would say 90% of my rabid readers are boys who are like, I can't compete with Edward Cullen, Yeah, we should stake these things because
I didn't even like him.
Yeah, no, I didn't either. But that's join the DVA conversation tomorrow, because we'll be talking about that in the domestic violence. That's one of my pet peeves, is that their relationship was really unhealthy, and it's become,
there were so many issues with that,
a norm, and girls don't understand, why is he being so mean to me? That's the next step. Yeah, it starts out like Edward Cullen and it seems so romantic because you're his entire world, but then it turns into, if you don't make sure you're he's your entire world, then you're in trouble. I didn't
finish Twilight.
I did, unfortunately.
I couldn't. And but part of it was some of that. First of all, I love vampire lore. Love it. It is something that and not even just reading, all the movies, everything. I'm a huge Buffy Vampire Slayer person.
Oh, yes.
I love Buffy. Okay. And I love Buffy. There's no getting around it. But the sparkly vampire Twilight thing irritated me. But what irritated me more was the storyline and the weak character. And then that relationship. I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah. I would never let my daughter will never watch this stuff. Not if I have anything to say about it, because that is not okay from my perspective.
Yeah, and then what really bothered me is that the movies played up more than the books did. That really bothered me. I mean, the books, when I was reading the books, I was like, oh, I don't really like this relationship. This isn't healthy.
Yeah.
But it wasn't there was a lot of other stuff in it. And the books totally just focused on the unhealthy relationship and the Team Jacob versus Team Edward. By the way, everybody out there, if you meet a guy like Jacob, do not pass on him for a guy like Edward. Edward's
don't say it.
Yeah. Marry your best friend. Don't marry your heartthrob, because that's probably the biggest problem in relationships and why the divorce rate is so high. You fall in love with this person who's unreal. And then when you see that real person, the whole relationship falls apart. I'm married to my best friend, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting you bring that up. I'm listening to a book right now called Fascinate, and I'm blanking on the woman's name who wrote the book, but I'm listening to it right now. Nonfiction, but it's talking about why we are fascinated by people or things or brands or whatever. And the part I'm on right now, she was talking about, I think it's a chemical in the body. I can't remember the name of the chemical, Dopamine? But it has to do with,
Dopamine?
No, it's not that. It had initials that I'm blanking on. But the bottom line was that women who are on birth control, it suppresses something in them. And so they are attracted to people who, or men who are more like along the lines of the best friend or whatever. Where normally, if you're not on that, you're attracted to the symmetrical, perfect, the Cohen, Edward guy. And I thought that was really interesting, because it's something that in our bodies, we already have it. And so it's important to realize that. But the other side, she didn't get into yet, and I don't know if she will, how that could not be good.
Yeah.
How that could be a negative for some people. So I think that's really interesting. But like I said, I would give my kid, my daughter and my son, the same advice that what you're saying right now. It's find the person who you have things in common with, who supports you, who isn't obsessive.
Right.
Who
respects your right to have a life outside of theirs.
Find that person.
And they don't have to be exactly like you. I mean, my husband and I, part of what makes us work so well is that we're complete opposites.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I'm the cheapskate and I never want to go out to eat and I want to stay home and watch movies. And he's
that frugal.
Oh, sure. I'm cheapskate. According to my family, I'm a cheapskate. But that works great for him because if he'd married a woman that liked clothes as much as him, we'd never be able to afford both of us. So, and then I help keep him in line with that. And then he is, he always believes in anybody's ability to make it in America. Mm-hmm. And he's been incredibly supportive of my writing ventures. Even when I get frustrated, he's, the first one they're saying, you know what, just do the next one. Why don't you try this? This is something that I've seen people doing that seems to be working. And he is really big into video games and he's kind of frustrated because I would rather die than play a video game. But I get to read while he plays video games and then he listens to his friends in the background. Their wives are like, did you get off the stupid computer already? And he's like, I love you so much. I'm so glad that you respect my desire to game. There's little things. He's better with money than I am. That's why I'm such a cheapskate. I'm sorry, frugal. I'm frugal because because I'm not good with money. And if I don't spend it, I don't have to budget because then I have it when I need it. Mm-hmm. Whereas his thing is, I can spend $30 on pants this week because I've already planned out the budget. So we're good. And I'm just like, are you sure? Okay, well, if you're sure, we're okay. So
that is so funny. I am someone who I married someone who is very similar to myself. And there are a couple things that are very different. I mean, so similar that on the Myers-Briggs personality inventory, there's only one thing different.
Oh, wow.
on ours. And
we don't have anything in common. Nothing.
For us, it's the one thing that makes things really interesting, actually. And we both are fairly frugal people. I'm a little more frugal than he is, probably. But we're both fairly frugal people. I like frugal. That's a very positive word. Oh, yeah. Frugal.
I'm okay with cheap. I don't have to compete with the Kardashians. I'm okay with it.
I'm all right with it too. But it's a neat thing to see how other people do it. I look at my parents. My parents seem very opposite. But then when you talk to them, you realize they actually have a lot of their core values are the same. They're both fairly introverted people doing extroverted jobs. So there's a lot of similarities there. That's me. I'm an introvert and I do a lot of extroverted stuff and all of that. My husband's an introvert. He's actually more introverted than I am, but he has to do extroverted stuff for his work. Right. And it's just one of those things that you do. But that's probably why I would recommend that my child never watch that show and try and just deal in reality in the relationships that are around them because they've got some healthy relationships around them to model. And that other example we gave isn't one of those.
Yeah. And I kind of feel the same way about a lot of romance, even the more positive ones like Hallmark. I have a niece who's right at that age where she's starting to date and she's really frustrated because guys aren't like the Hallmark Channel because that's what her mom watched all the time with her. Like and I was like, honey, think about it. Are you like the girl on the Hallmark Channel? It's not really fair. And having
that's such a good point.
I was laughing because there was a quote going around. I guess LDS conference just happened. I have a lot of friends that are LDS. And there was a quote going around by one of the speakers that said, and he was talking to the men, but it applies both ways. And he said, gentlemen, stop waiting around for the perfect woman. Stop looking for the perfect woman because let's be honest. What makes you think that the perfect woman would want you? And it's absolutely true. I mean, to have these unrealistic expectations and then be frustrated when we're pigeonholed with the same unrealistic expectations is not a productive way to have a relationship. And acknowledging that nobody's perfect and that we work on being perfect together is the healthiest part of a relationship, and then also defining perfection between the two of you is really important, because what some people consider important isn't the same as what other people consider important.
It sounds like the things we're talking about, this really informs your writing. I mean, I would bet if I was reading your books, I would be able to say, this is at the core, this is at the heart of what this writer is doing.
Yeah, I have a lot of, I laughed when the first book in the Hunters series came out. One of the reviewers said that I turned gender roles on their head. And I was like, what is he talking about? I know. I was
what
like,
did you do?
What did you do? And I had to go to my brother because my husband was really confused too. And he's like, it doesn't seem all that weird. And we were trying to pinpoint what characters it was. And it was actually the two, the Immortal and the Werewolf, Fury and Havoc, who are in a relationship, but Fury's the leader. She's a female and she's the leader. She's the more dominant. And she's the one that makes the decisions. And Havoc is a little lost without her, which is why he ends up partying with these poor little humans. And my brother was like,
"Wait. Which one's the Which one's the vampire and which one's the
she's not a vampire. She's an immortal."
Oh, she's an immortal.
Fury is an immortal.
And the other one.
And Havoc is the werewolf.
But is that why she's the alpha? Because she's
it actually happened because they were kind of based on me and my husband, and I'm the more dominant person in the relationship. And and we never really thought that our relationship was weird. I was raised by a single mom, and he was raised by a single mom for several years, and then when she did remarry, she married a very gentle man because her husband beat her, and that's why she got divorced. He was anyway, and so he was looking for a dominant woman, and he was comfortable in not being dominant, and our relationship worked great, and we never saw any issues, and none of our friends ever said anything. And so when I mentioned it to my brother, he's like, hello, do you realize that's not normal? I was like, well, I mean, it's not like the 1980s normal, but this is 2003, 2004. This is normal. And he's like, no, it's really not. Yeah. So I was like, oh, sure. I'm championing women being dominant. That's what I'm doing. But no, it really was just because they were based on us and how we would react in those situations. So.
And it's so funny because there's that adage of writers write what you know.
And it really
and that's what you did,
Yeah, and I have to say the Clear Angel really Chronicles was actually a lot harder for me to write because it balances the two better. Once I was made aware that my relationship wasn't that balanced, we worked on it a little bit. But that situation, the detective, Grant Anderson, is, well, one, he's in power because he's the detective. Two, he's older and more wise to the world. And Claire Angel is, she's 24 in the first book. She's lived in the same town most of her life. She can't leave the town because her experiences when she's in larger cities is overwhelming. And she doesn't really understand people very well at all. And so I very much flipped the script with that one. And it was exploring a different viewpoint and was very much based on a friend of mine's relationship where her husband was the more dominant and observing the way that they engaged with each other. A lot of the worldviews that I share are based on observation. And a lot of times the story that I'm telling isn't the story you're reading. It's all of the layers underneath.
I saw a t-shirt, and you've probably seen this before, and other people have probably seen it, a shirt that basically says something like, I'm an author or I'm a writer, and yes, you could end up in my next book. That's
absolutely true.
It's true.
Yep. There's a reason that Hell School was labeled as fiction. It was so that I didn't get sued. and it is. I mean, none of the characters are wholly one individual. I had a friend from high school who went through the experience with me, and he was reading the book, and he's like, it's so cute because this person is this person and this person, right? And I was like, yeah, they're merged together. It's not, none of them are one individual. They encompass a lot of people, but they're similar personality types that were important to the story. And that was probably the hardest part of writing that story, is because nobody has 6 friends or 7 friends in high school. You have like 10, 15, 20. Some of them are closer friends. Some of them are more intimate friends. All of them fit into a 6 or 7 friend window. And that's how I had to combine the characters, because when I first wrote it, it was much more true to fiction. I wasn't going to publish it as fiction. And besides the fact of being sued, I had a lot of people who hadn't experienced it who became my friends later. And they're like, I'm so confused. Who's this person again? Why is this relevant? You know, you have to explain all these different people. So it was really hard. Yeah.
So we have a question here from Tom. What point of view was the story written in? Tom, are you talking about the story she's talking about now, or the other two?
I think he's talking about Claire Angell. Claire Angell.
This
or not Claire Angell. Sorry.
Okay.
The Hell School series. Right. So the Hell School series is told in 2 different perspectives. One is through letters to her best friend, so it's first person. And that's at the start of each chapter. And then each chapter is told from third person limited to Sam's views.
And why did you decide to do
partly
it that way?
Because, well, originally I was going to do it all in just the diary entries. It was originally called Letters to Hell School, or Letters from Hell School, because it was really raw and really hard. I mean, it took me 10 years to write this story. The experience that I went through was hard separating the emotional trauma. I mean, I suffered from PTSD for quite some time after the experience. My whole worldview really shifted because of this experience, because early on, teachers and administrators, people in power, didn't take appropriate steps and made me feel like it was my fault. I was raised to respect authority. That kind of killed that. I was raised that you should be nice to everyone. And with this person, if I had realized earlier on that the best thing to do would just be to tell him to stay out of my life, and if I'd started reporting it sooner, it probably wouldn't have gone to the extreme that it did. But I missed out on a lot of events through high school because of the experience, and writing it from the first person perspective was just too hard. And getting into those details of what happened was just too hard. So I took it from a third person, made her a fictional character, and it was a little easier. So, yeah.
That would be easier. I have another podcast called The Womanly Art of Self-Defense. And I interviewed a woman who started a company called Pretty Loaded. They're out of, I want to say, North Dakota. And we had an interesting conversation about this sort of topic, because what we said was, I find it very interesting because women, in my experience, have a tendency to feel like, oh, I'm being rude. Even though the other person's being the jerk, we feel like, oh, I don't want to be rude, and I don't want to hurt your feelings, and I don't want to. And the reality is, this is my opinion. Get over it. We can't. It's so what?
Well, and it's not
be rude.
Necessarily. It's something that we're taught. And it's funny because my mom is.
Yeah, it is.
Part of the reason my parents got divorced is because she finally grew into her own when I was very young, and said, I'm done being treated like your doormat. I am done. I don't want to be a stay-at-home wife. I never wanted to be a stay-at-home wife. And you're bound and determined to make sure I stay at home. And it's not going to happen anymore. I'm done. And my earliest remembrances, she's always been a very dominant woman. And so this anxiety and this fear that I had, it wasn't taught from her. Society taught me that it wasn't okay to stand up for myself. Society taught me that it was my fault because that's what the teacher said. Well, you know, maybe you should give him a chance. No, I had no interest in him. And it wasn't because he was awkward or he didn't know how to approach me. It was because I had absolutely no interest in him. And I shouldn't give somebody a chance just because that's the nice thing to do. If I'm not interested in you, then I'm not interested. And if a guy were to not be interested in me and for me to continue to pursue that relationship, I would be labeled a couple of choice words. But when guys do it, we're the ones who are being unreasonable by not accepting their advances. It's kind of ridiculous. And the same thing happens with, you know, like you were saying, being rude. Little girls who tell people what to do are bossy. Little boys who do it are leaders, born leaders. Leaders. And it is. It's societal leaders. Expectations of, and so, yeah, I guess I do kind of flip gender norms on their head in my books, and I'm not ashamed of that at all. Yeah, exactly.
That's a good thing.
Exactly.
It's not a bad thing.
She is.
Badass character.
You would love her. She is
sorry,
amazing.
I said a bad word. But it was a good word. It was a good word. I'm sorry. Good word.
I'm with you.
Not a bad word. And I mean, I like writing strong female characters. And, you know, the idea that person has to be flawed in some way, I'm like, well, maybe I'll find a flaw, but really, she needs to be a strong female character. Well, I'm writing the characters that I want my daughter to read.
Right. And one of the things that I think I've kind of done between the Clear Angel Chronicles and the Hunters is kind of what Joss Whedon did with his lovely strong cast in Firefly. And that's that there isn't one definition of a strong woman. You know, with Clear Angel, her strengths are more of the feminine nature. She's very compassionate. She's very sensitive. She's able to see things from other people's perspectives, sometimes losing track of her own. She's very caring and that nurturing instinct. She can't say no when Grant comes back asking her for help after he was a total jerk to her, because she can literally feel his pain. She has that empathic piece to her. And whereas Fury is just, you know, she's like the traditional fantasy, I can kick anybody's butt. And if you want to make a deal of it, let's see who ends up on top. That's the winner. And I love both of them. I think that both of those are great, strong characters. And even with Sam, you know, several people were like, oh, she's so weak. And I can't believe she's handling it the way she handled it. And that really hurts because that's what I did in real life. But keeping in mind that she's a 14-year-old girl, you're going to watch her come into her own and go from that sweet, strong girl who knew she wasn't interested and wasn't going to be pushed into the relationship that she didn't want to be into, to the, as you said, badass girl who will use her fists to protect herself and do what she has to do to keep herself safe. So I think all of those are demonstrations of strong women, just different strengths.
Mm-hmm. I will say this, badass girl does not necessarily mean that they can kick your butt.
Maybe verbally.
They might do it mentally. Do it mentally, might do it verbally.
I agree.
They can do it.
Absolutely agree.
Is the overall point right there. You know, it's interesting. I think you're writing these characters that are younger, right? But we, I think, both know that a lot of people who read middle grade or whatever are adults. And we are bringing, I think, our adult minds and adult perspective to that material. And Twilight is an example. I mean, I didn't care for it. I couldn't finish the first one. I watched the movies, some of them.
Yeah, I had a problem with the second movie.
I figured that was the only way that I could
there. When I was attracted to a 16-year-old boy, I felt like it was just wrong. So,
Creepy.
That was the word that went through my head.
but wait.
Oh, no.
Immortal.
I'm talking about Jacob, who was not. And I'm not even referring to Jacob. I'm referring to what happened to that poor actor. I remember watching him with my kids in, what was that show? Shark Boy and Lava Girl, I think is what it was. He was the cute little shark boy, and he's so cute. And I just wanted to cuddle him. And then
I forgot that was him.
In the first movie, I was like, oh, he's the perfect character.
Messes it up for me.
And then when the trailer happened for the second one, I was watching it with my husband. He actually loves the Twilight series. Shh, don't tell anybody. But I was really surprised. He loves rom-coms and I know. And I'm an action and horror chick. And so when he can find something that's urban fantasy with a romantic element, we finally have something we can watch together. But yeah, he was all excited when we went and saw that one in the theaters. And like, it wasn't that bad, right? And I was like, they sparkled, honey. They sparkled. And he's like, but it wasn't.
That's all you had to say. They sparkle.
So and he's like, but we can do this, right? And I was like, yeah, we can do it, I guess. That's cool. And then we saw the trailer for the second one. I was like, no, we can't watch it anymore. He's like, why? And I was like, because my body just had a reaction that I am so not comfortable with. And I am not watching the rest of this because that's just wrong. Because at the time, the actor was, I think he was 16 or 17. That's jailbait. No, he should not be looking like that. It's just wrong. So that was the end of the Twilight series for us.
Okay, what I was bringing that to, and that's all right too. What is that? As we're adults, bringing our adult mindset and our adult experiences to this movie or to this book. And so when you were talking about, well, we have to keep in mind this is a 14-year-old reacting this way. That's really, I think, difficult for the adult reader to remember. Oh, that's how I was a complete idiot when I was 14. It's hard to remember that some of that stuff. Oh, I really did do that when I was 12. I think that's hard for an adult reader to actually remember. And the first time I encountered this, I was asked to review a writer's book, and she is much younger than I, and she was writing a young adult series. And I read, and I don't like young adult. That's not something I typically read. But I said, no, I'll read it, and I'll give a review. And so I did. And then in my review, I said, you know what? It took me several times to read her book, not because it was poorly written, but because I had to get past my mind, my adult mind, and remember my younger mind and how this was being written and the perspective it was coming from and all of that. And when I did that, I really liked the book. I enjoyed the book. And that's what I said in the review. I had to get past myself as an adult reader and read it from the perspective of my young adult mind and remember what it was like to be that age and experience some of those things. Those emotions and all that, and the reason I don't read generally and don't like the YA is because I don't want to relive that. I really don't. I didn't enjoy it the first time. Why would I want to do that again? So it's my own biases, right? It's my own biases getting in the way of me enjoying a particular genre or the writing that's happening. And she's a good writer. Her name's Shannon Thompson, in case anyone wants to look her up. Good writer. And a fun series she's got going on. So that's what I think probably might be happening with some of your stuff. You said that you got some feedback.
Oh, yeah. Well, and we're in a culture where, nobody wants to think of themselves as a victim. One of the things that I found really interesting from some of the readers that came in was that they realized for the first time reading my stuff that they had themselves been stalked and hadn't realized what a dangerous situation they'd put themselves in, and didn't recognize the behavior as inappropriate behavior. And reading my story, they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I there was a gut thing that said, oh, this isn't okay, but everybody else said, oh no, it's no big deal, and I let it happen. And that's an unfortunate tell in our society. And then you have people who have lived through traumatic experiences or who had parents that lived through traumatic experiences, and they raise their children to be self-reliant, and they raise their children to be wary of such situations. And I mean, certainly that's where my boys are. They are much more conscious than a lot of their peers about female-male interactions. because I raised them to respect women, and not that other mothers didn't raise them to respect women. They just didn't impress upon them as strongly as I did, because they didn't necessarily have those
Well, it's interesting you say
experiences.
Because it wouldn't just it's not just between male and female, because it can be between female, male, male, male. And I'm not talking, homosexual relationships. That could be it too. But when you're talking about bullies and things like that, that stuff can happen. One of the things that I have been studying for the last almost year and a half or so is body language, because I love studying body language. It's just a fascinating thing. And as a martial artist, it's something that is just a natural fit for me. So that's what I teach my kids too, is watch people's reactions to things, their body, because that's going to teach you and show you more than whatever they're doing here. So pay attention to that. And it doesn't matter if they're male or female, pay attention to that so that you know what potentially is coming your way, so that you can react and respond appropriately, or avoid it completely. Because, if you see it, you can avoid it. So pay attention to that sort of thing. I think it's awesome what you're doing in your writing. Clearly, your experiences are informing your writing. I mean, that's what many writers do. I think that's a great thing. What is your website? Because I don't think we put it into the chat yet. So you should do that.
HeidiAngell.com. And
do you want to put that in there?
Yeah.
So people have it. And if you would please put in a link for the pages, like the Amazon page or wherever you want people to go for your books. And if you do you have any promos going on right now?
I do. If you go to my website, which is right there, on the front page at the very top, there is a spot for you to fill out your information to get an ebook copy of The Hunters for free. So get you started on a series with the new book coming out. Good. I'm looking for some more fans.
And when is the new book coming out?
It's slated to come out in July, but it might be August. Had a lot of stuff come up with marketing. I didn't realize that April was Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And so because of my book coming out in March, I got pulled into a bunch of stuff with that. Everybody's like, oh, come speak with this and come do this. And anyway, so it's taken away from my writing time a little bit, having those extra things thrown in. But hopefully July, maybe August. But if you go to the website and fill out the information, I do send out a weekly email letting people know updates and things like that. So, and it's only once a week, I promise. But it just keeps them up.
You should go check out that prettyloaded.org that I mentioned. They put out some really good PSA type videos and things like that. Just really good information for people. You might want to check it out just to see what you think could be useful. But also, before I let you go, because we're running a little long time here, I do want to know, I do this occasionally. The person's fascinating, and I have to keep talking to them just for a little bit longer. Okay, so good, because I wasn't done. We haven't really talked about marketing or advertising at all, and I think we probably should at least touch on that. So what do you generally do for marketing? What works for you, or what have you found works most effectively for you?
I like my email newsletter. It's a new thing that I just started doing. Promoting through blog hops to get people to sign up for the email newsletter has been incredibly successful. I did one. I did one last month with Little Things Blog Hop is what it was called. And they did a thing from St. Patrick's Day till April 1st. And it was 287 blogs that went out, as part of the hop. And I ended up I was giving away the hunters. And I ended up getting 68 new subscribers for a free hop that took me 10 minutes to write the post for.
Okay, back up, because some people have no idea what you're talking about when you're talking about a blog hop. So describe what that is, what's involved, what do you have to do? How much time does it take you to get the signal? Froze for a minute. I have no idea why.
Yeah, absolutely. So with blog hops, it's there's a couple of different ways that people do it. Some of them will have everybody post the same day, and then it's over the same day. Some of them will have a new post each step. It's like a blog tour, but it's not related to a specific book. It's related to a specific theme. And then bloggers will sign up to be a part of this tour, and it ends up getting put together on a master tour list. And you just agree to post at the time that you agree to post. And usually it's around a theme. So like with the Little Things blog hop, I incorporated it into my my book tour for house school. And I did Sam's Little Things. It was the 10 little things that keep Sam from going crazy while she's going through this moment.
Now, are you posting the blog at the same time as everybody else on your own blog, or is it getting posted?
Right. So you post on your blog as part of the blog hop. And with this one, we all posted on the same day, St. Patrick's Day. And then the master list was posted on a Facebook page. It was also posted on the main tour page. And then we were all requested to put a link to that or a link to the next person in the hop on our page. So I just wrote 10 things that 10 little things that kept Sam from going crazy, put my offer in, and then put a link to the master link and let them know there were over 200 authors and they were all, or 200 bloggers that were part of it. And many of them were giving away free goodies and that they had through April 1st to hit all of the spots in the hop. And then I posted once a day on all my social media links, reminding people about the hop and linking them back to my website. And that's pretty much it.
Once a day
for the tour of the hop. So it started March 17th and it ended April 1st. So 2 weeks-ish. And you know, everyone is different. I did one, a while ago. Anyway, it was, everybody did it on the same day, but they had different times that they posted. And so I started out in the morning letting people know that the hop was going on and linking to the main tour page. And then when I posted my post, which was at like 11, I linked to mine. And then I reminded them at the end of the day with my link that this program was going on and that they were all doing the giveaways. And in my blog post, I had a link to the next spot on the blog hop.
So how are you finding blog hops?
I find a lot of them on Goodreads. Good Reviews group is a group of reviewers, and they'll do random hops where they'll focus on specific genres or whatever. I also find them through authors because I do a weekly Meet the Author Monday post. And by following them on Facebook and Twitter and things like that, when they find them, they let people know. And that's actually how I found out about the Little Things hop. It was from Colleen Myers. And I had her as a guest on my blog to meet the author. And she was doing it as a part of the release for her new book. And that's how I got involved with that. You can also find them if you go to LinkedIn bloggers groups. There's a lot of connections there. As an author who doesn't blog, you won't have a lot of success with that. I blog 3 times a week. So I've been doing the blogging thing a lot, probably more than I should, but I enjoy it. It's fun. But yeah, finding your niche in that market is tricky if you don't already blog.
Responding to a question in the chat, we have someone who has a question, but I invited him to join us in the open seat to see if he wanted to ask the question that way. So we'll see if he wants to do that. Okay, you're doing the blog hops. I'm really surprised by that, by the way, that worked as effectively as it has worked for you. It's making me go, maybe I should look at that again, because I haven't done that. I've done blog tours,
it's absolutely free and it takes about 10 minutes. And with blog hops, the nice thing about blog hops is when you do a blog tour, I love doing blog tours because it's good for social media. I very rarely get sales from blog tours. If I'm not giving something away, I very rarely get any interaction. I do I do it, one, so I can get reviews, because rather than give it to a bunch of readers who may or may not post, if they're part of Blog Tour, they're going to post the review. And we all know reviews are important. And you can get an idea of what kind of a review you're going to get from the blogger, too, if you take 5 minutes and look at the reviews that they've done for other books like yours. So you can vet your reviewers, which you can't do once it goes live and anybody can post. And I lost where I was going with that.
Well, before I have this person come in and ask his question, and I will let you ask your question. I'm going to grab you in here in a second here. I'm going to let you come in a second and ask your question. You're going to show up. Just give me a minute. Okay, so you're doing this. How much time does it take you to arrange either these blog hops or these blog tours? And all of
so
that?
with the blog tour that I did for Health School, I did a 6-week tour with a stop for each day. And it was a variety of different stops. Some were reviews, some were interviews, some were podcast interviews, some were events that we were doing. I did a Facebook takeover event and invited a bunch of authors to that. I started planning the tour in November for the tour to start February 27th. But mostly I had everything in place before February 27th, including all of the stuff written. And then I just had to show up each day, say hi to the person that I was working with, and reshare their information. And I started so early because I was only contacting 2 or 3 reviewers a day, because I work full time too. So you can't do, if you,
what? You can't do it all.
And if you do a tour right, you want to be very personal. You want to contact each of them individually and mention their blog and what you liked about it. If you want to throw together a mass one, which I actually did with the second book in the Clear Angel Chronicles, because I didn't have a lot of time, and I still filled up a 6-week tour. But I didn't get as good a vetting as I would have liked, because I just sent out a mass mailer to over 350 bloggers that I had on my list. Yeah. And of 350, I got, I think, 60 stops total, which isn't bad. But of the 170 that I contacted with this, I ended up getting 65. So, a lot less contact and a lot better reviews.
That was better. Yeah, that was better. So, Priest, you've joined us. You have a question?
Can you guys hear me?
Can you turn up your volume a little bit?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, that's better.
So I do have a question. So I think, I'm relatively a good speaker in terms of, I can, when I'm talking to someone, I can articulate what's on my mind and all that kind of good stuff. But when it comes to writing down my thoughts, I just suck at it. I can't, for some reason, I can't translate what I'm thinking about and actually put them in words that convey the message as maybe the same way I would speak it. How do you guys suggest writing? And sometimes there's other things that go along with that, like grammar and certain things. But generally speaking, when it comes to storytelling and formulating words and something that really comes across to someone, what kind of suggestions do you have for being a better writer?
Are you talking
this would be
nonfiction?
Nonfiction for sure.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You want to tackle that first?
One of the things that I have experienced with a lot of nonfiction writers is that they don't write their books. They record their ideas and then they hire a ghostwriter, which can be expensive. I would recommend recording your ideas and then going through them, have somebody write up the transcript, or using, Dragon?
Dragon, naturally speaking.
Yeah.
Dragon.
And then organize it and beta test it with
That's a good idea.
People that are in your group. And if it makes sense and flow, then send it off to an editor. Editors are not that expensive. It depends. But
did you hear the cough there? It kind of depends on what editor.
But and it's not one of those situations where you get what you pay for either. My editor, she's not as good as the last guy, Tom's editor. but she's not that cheap. But I mean, I pay her less than I make an hour, so that helps me a lot. In my full-time job, I pay her less than I make an hour, and she does an amazing job of cleaning up and editing the work for me. And I think,
do you guys go to Upwork or something like that to maybe hire an editor from there as well? Upwork is like this where you can outsource your articles and.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. There's the reason I asked if you were doing nonfiction or fiction is because when you're looking at editors, that's important to know. Because if I'm a fiction writer, I'm looking for an editor who perhaps uses the Chicago manual style as their base, as their main base, because that's not the same style guide as MLA. It's not the same guide as APA, American Psychological Association. It's not the same guide as AP style. AP style is for journalism, generally articles, things of that nature. I would, in my view, I would be more inclined to use AP style if I were doing nonfiction versus using Chicago CMS to do nonfiction, but that's just a personal preference. But you would have to know that sort of base stuff and know where they're coming from when they edit your work or when they're starting to put it together for you, if it's a ghostwriter sort of scenario. That's what I would do from an editing perspective. I agree with Heidi. I would say, recording, I was thinking the Dragon software too, because I know a lot of writers use that and it's really helpful. I haven't used the Dragon. I will use the recorder on my phone when I'm trying to just record ideas or whatever. I also use Scrivener as my writing software because it's a really easy way to organize everything that I'm doing, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. Scrivener is really inexpensive. It's a very affordable word processing tool that you can use. The other thing that I would recommend as a step between, you've done the writing, you've done the recording, you've put it together in Scrivener maybe, or in your Word document, because it could be Word too. Then there's some editing software that I came across that I'm really liking right now, and it's from Serenity Software, and it's called The Editor. And this stuff, I decided to try their free trial and use it on some work that I'm doing right now. It catches so much stuff
have you
in
used
terms of errors,
Grammarly
things
before?
like that. It is.
Have you used Grammarly?
What? It is.
It is. Is
better
it
than Grammarly.
Fiction too, or is it just nonfiction?
It's better than Grammarly.
Nice.
It's for fiction and nonfiction, and they use as their style guide. One of the style guides, because they have a few, is Chicago Manual Style. They have a comparative study on their website that can show you how all of the named, known grammar checker, whatever, all of those compare in their analysis and stuff. And they'll tell you, even if you took out their stuff, you'll be able to see how all the other ones performed in the test. So it wasn't a biased test. They actually did. And it's amazing.
Oh, wow.
It's been around for 30 years, this particular software. Yeah, it's been around for a while. And I've been testing it. Like I said, for the last week or so, I've been playing with it and testing it and really taking it through the ringer to see what it does. They've got a version of it that is for your Word. So let's say you're using Word on your computer. They have a Word add-on feature that lets you do everything on screen in real time to make your corrections. If you don't want to do that, the more traditional way is you create a draft copy of it in their editor software, and then you can compare their analysis of what they may have found to your document. And they have categories, so you can run a fix, the things you absolutely need to fix, spell 1, spell 2. They suggest that you spell check everything first, but do spell 1, spell 2. Tighten, things that will tighten up your document, polish your document, and things they just suggest you might want to do with your document. So it's been amazing.
You use that editor in place of an actual editor in some cases?
No, I have that. I actually am not. I have an editor, and I found this software, and I thought, I want to try this because it'll make my editor's job easier if I do this step, right? And it will, because here's the thing. You pay editors typically by the hour. So the less time they spend having to correct your stuff, the better for you, right? So if you get something like this and put it as I wrote the document, I revised the document, then I ran it through this, and I did some more revisions, and then I gave it to the editor, you're probably going to save a little bit of money.
That's great advice.
If you do that. And that editor software is not expensive. I'm a frugal person.
You're talking about
I'm a business owner. I've been a business owner for a long time. Okay. I mean, aside from writing, I have my own business that I've had for almost 13 years. Very frugal. And this software, it's like for the base standard one is something like $50 something. For the one with the word add-on feature, I think is $79 or something. So we're talking under $100, and you can get this software that is better than any other stuff out there in terms of catching errors. It's that tight. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm loving it. I was frustrated with a couple things. I'm going to do a full review on it pretty soon. But I was frustrated with a few things, just quirks. But I figured some of it out.
That's
I'm
great.
like, oh, I love this.
That's good.
So I would do that. That would be one of the things I would highly recommend is get that. And Scrivener is awesome too. I have my frustrations with it, but I really like how I can organize things in Scrivener.
Good advice, guys.
But to your comment of you said something about writing, you suck at writing. I bet you don't suck at that.
Not as much as some people.
Well, maybe not. And maybe I over-exaggerate. I mean, I own a business too, and we do a lot of blog posts and different things like that. But I'd like to be better, I guess, is all I'm saying. You know, and who wouldn't?
Well, I mean, all of us would be. And that editor software, one of the things that motivated me to get it, besides the whole in-between step, and it could make things better, is it helps you become a better writer, because it doesn't tell you, hey, do this. It's more like, I think you might want to consider. All of them are suggestions that end up improving your writing, because then you're having to go look it up. Oh my God, is that what? I don't believe them. Let me go look at my Chicago Manual style. Let me prove them wrong. So if you don't have a Chicago Manual style, 16th edition, you might want to get that. If you don't have a couple other style guides, you might want to investigate a couple, but it kind of depends on what you want to do. I love Chicago Manual style. I also happen to really like Grammar Girl, and she has a lot of stuff online. So I use, Chicago Manual style, Grammar Girl, and I recently found the editor blog, and I like that one too, because the answers are, and they both use the Chicago Manual style as a base for a lot of stuff that when they're giving answers. So it's like they're translating the Chicago Manual style for you.
Appreciate it, guys. As to your question for hiring an editor, you can use sources like that. I would be very careful and vet them and look for like rip-off reports on them, because a lot of times you're getting people who are working in different countries and who aren't native English speakers. Which that's fine for something. I mean, they do great with like blog posts, but when it comes to sharing bigger ideas, or you'll get someone who's just going to do grammar, and then they can't vet the content as much as you might want. And for nonfiction, especially, having that organization and making sure that your editor can understand what you're trying to get across, so that anybody who reads it can understand it, is very important. My experience has been, like, the person who does the editing for me is actually somebody that I went to college with, and she got an English degree. And so, she's perfect for that. But I would recommend finding your local university and go talk to your comm department or your English department and see because there are a lot of adjunct professors that just teach part-time, and they would love the extra money. And they'll do it for a reasonable price. Because
and I live in North Carolina, and we got universities all over the place. Duke,
that's a great idea. Raven in the chat mentioned that Evernote can take dictation too. I didn't know that. I don't use Evernote anymore, but apparently Evernote can take dictation. So you might check that. I know that the Dragon software can be a bit expensive, and there's a learning curve to the Dragon software. So maybe the Evernote one is easier. And
Evernote is a good suggestion. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
absolutely. Glad to have you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question. See you later. Awesome. That was a great question. Thank you for posing that question, and your answer's awesome.
You too. I learned something, so I'm happy.
That's what it's all about. That's what the Back Porch Writer Show is all about. That it's about the writers and sharing information and everybody learning something from everybody else. That's why I started the show to begin with. So any other questions for Heidi, who has been so gracious to stay here longer than she was scheduled?
With the kids. Easy choice. No, I'm just kidding.
But no, this was awesome. I appreciate you being here. So any other questions before we let Heidi go and be with her family and maybe get some dinner?
Food.
I don't know. I don't know what time it is where you are in Utah.
8:30. So
8:30. Oh, we're okay. I'm an hour later. I was gonna say we're not. I need popcorn. I haven't had dinner.
I feel you. I haven't eaten yet either. I was busy watching the last one. I was like, oh, I probably should. That's okay. It's only going to be an hour. That's okay. I forget to eat all the time. It's okay.
Sorry. Big deal. Popcorn and cheese. I'm good with that. So, Heidi, remind everybody really quickly about where they can find all of your books and any promos.
So if you go to my website, which I am going to post in the comments again, you can actually find links from my website to everything. I have links to both Smashwords and Amazon. And because of Smashwords, my books are on everything from Barnes and Nobles. Go to your local person that you like to buy from. They're all in paperback and in ebooks, so you can pick and choose. I'm working on audiobooks. It's very tricky. Very time consuming. But those will be up when they're up. And this month, for the whole month, I am giving away an ebook copy of The Hunters for those who go to my website, top of the page, subscribe. Actually, I think it specifically says get my free copy of The Hunters. But you're subscribing to my weekly newsletter, and it is only once a week, I promise. I will not spam you. And it's lots of fun stuff. It's not just my promotionals. It's Meet the Author Mondays. I do share poetry. I have fun experiences that are going on. I posted about this wonderful event and all of the B2B stuff that was going on. So, yeah, it's just fun once a week. So.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Heidi, so much for joining me here on Back Porch Writer, the show for writers, about writers, and writing that usually is live every Tuesday at 9:30 in the morning on Blog Talk Radio. But because this is the Brain to Books convention, cyber convention, we're doing this special run here over on Blab IM. So you can find other authors like the wonderful Heidi here all weekend long. So make sure you're coming back and you're checking for the Back Porch Writer Show here on Blab IM.
Thank you for
Heidi,
having me. Have a great weekend. All right, bye-bye.
You too. See you later. Thanks for joining me, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you again tomorrow and the next day, and then, maybe Back Porch Writer on Tuesdays, or maybe Indie Author Hour on Tuesdays. That's on Blab, just so you know. See you later.